Assalamualaikum, my name is Arfa and welcome to a brand new video. In today's video, I'd like to review the Catholic Study Bible that I have here. This is the third edition and this is based on the New American Bible Revised Edition. The Catholic Study Bible, as I've mentioned many times in my previous videos, that this is my favorite and my go-to study Bible apart from the HarperCollins Study Bible. And that is because it has about 500 pages or so of reading guides. If you can see here, RG21, these are the reading guides. We have every single book of the Bible, and so we go all the way to the book of Revelation, right? It is still reading guides. So 500 over pages, almost 600 pages. But I say 500 over pages, about 500 pages or so, is because the first 100 pages or so, it's actually the articles. Like for example, we have articles on biblical translation and pastoral interpretation and so on and so forth. And so this is something that is superior, and not a lot of study Bible actually contains this. And even though this is predominantly used by Catholics at seminaries, but Protestants as well as anyone who wish to learn about the Bible, I would definitely recommend this, the Catholic Study Bible 3rd edition. It is thick. It is about, you have a lot of maps here. It's about 2,000 pages or so, almost 2,000 pages, and it has about 14 maps here, and these are the brief preview of the maps. Really great maps. You do not need an atlas because this is basically fantastic. Unlike several reviews on YouTube whereby they go through the length of the book, the size, the dimensions, so on and so forth, I want to focus more on the content. Right, so that is the map, and we have concordance, which is great. A lot of study Bible nowadays actually have concordance and so that is great. And we also have lectionary, like reading. In the ancient world, we have a lot of lectionary manuscripts, meaning manuscripts that scribes actually wrote certain passages on that were being used during summons or during during sermons or during preaching. And so they do not basically go through the whole book like this, because if you go through, for example, if you want to read this during Christmas, you have to go and turn the pages to the relevant passages. And so scribes in the past, they will actually write down all these pages, all these verses into a single manuscript or a single book, like compilation, lectionary compilation. And so we have that as well, and we have a lot of that. And so you also get, with Catholic, you get additional books that are not found in the Protestant canon. But Protestant canon nowadays also contains apocryphal books right at the end. The number of New Testament and within Protestant, Orthodox and Catholicism, they are the same, but the number of Old Testament books, the Hebrew Bible book, is different. And so we have here Genesis, which is the beginning of the Bible. I'm just going to flip pages here. We have introduction about the Pentateuch, and it also contains the reading guide here, that if you have problems, you can refer to the reading guides. And it doesn't only contain in the first page, it also contains throughout the pages, throughout the verses. For example, in chapter 2, if you want to know what chapter 2 is, you can refer to a reading guide, page 1 to 3 to 1 to 6. And so this is something that is superior to the Catholic study Bible. You can see here in chapter 3, We have another reading guide here, and so there's a lot of great reading guides here that you can actually refer to. We will begin right at the beginning. Let me just go to the beginning. So if you flip the pages, this is the soft cover edition, and the texture here is great. It is not like ordinary soft covers, but mine's beat up because I've been using it. But the texture here is great. Like there's friction when you rub your finger around it, and so this is great for you to hold for a long time. This is a slightly thicker paper, and then we have here, it is published by Oxford University Press. And so these are the contributors and the editors as well. But this is more liberal in its approach. Doesn't mean that there's no theological leaning. There are theological leaning, because after all, every human being has biases. So these are the list of maps, so on and so forth. The only issue is that you have to be careful, because this paper is very thin, and if you look at the first pages here, it has come out. Right. So it came out here, but so you have to be careful with it, because the pages are very thin. So general introduction, we have about introduction to the Bible, and these are all literatures that you should read. And we have biblical archaeology of the New Testament and also the Old Testament. Here he talks about the kingdom of Judah, the kingdom of Israel. Okay, the kingdom of Israel is in the north. And we also go to the Iron Age, the Iron 2 Age, the Iron 1C Age, also known as the Iron 2 Age. And it focuses mostly on the Exodus, about the historicity of the Exodus. Is it really historical, so on and so forth. And it provides argument from both sides. But the author do take a slight leaning towards the liberal approach. And then we have models of Israelite settlement, because if you read the book of Exodus, the people that actually escaped Egypt, including men, children, and their animals, it totaled to about 2 million. But there are no evidence for 2 million people settling around, the Sinai Peninsula. And so what it argues for is that most probably the numbers are really, really, really small, and so it is not significant. But it also provides a brief insight as to why did the Egyptian actually chase the people out of Egypt, right? So this is something interesting, because we have evidence in the past whereby Egyptian army chased down a group of people that escaped Egypt. And so the Egyptians do not want people to escape their country, right? If you just look at North Korea today, they do not want people escaping their country for whatever reason, right? And so this is the reason why the Egyptian actually chased down the people of Moses, right, the Israelites. You can think of it like a possessive way, whereby the Israelites were Egyptian slaves, right? And so they need a lot of these people to actually build their buildings, build their temples, so on and so forth. So if people run away, they mean they would not have a lot of manpower. So that is why they chase down these people. That is, of course, the non-theological or devotional explanation. Whereas if you look at the devotional theological explanation, is because God actually wants the Egyptian to suffer, to drown, right? Because it is Yahweh who saved the people, who brought the people out of Egypt. And so we talk about the interpretation of the Bible, how the Bible has been interpreted over the years, beginning with the church fathers, and then we go to Aquinas, so on and so forth, right? The early church. Here we have topic on the early church. And so this is something that is really, really, really beneficial. And also archaeology, if we look at all the other study Bibles, it doesn't have a lot of doesn't have a lot of articles on archaeology. But in this study Bible, we have at least about 30 or 40 pages of article regarding archaeology. And so this is something great. It basically summarizes much of the discussion that you need to know regarding biblical archaeology. For example, if you go to the ESV, it has the ESV Archaeological Study Bible, which I will review inshallah. But here you have pretty much 40 pages. If you read these 40 pages on archaeology, you'll know a lot. You'll know what you need to know about biblical archaeology for both the Old Testament and the New Testament. For the New Testament, it mentions about the early Roman period, the Hellenistic period, and for the Old Testament biblical archaeology, it mentions all the way the plausibility of Adam and Eve, so on and so forth, right? But it mostly focused on the Iron Age, which is about 2000 BCE or so, towards the Middle Kingdom of Egypt. Every article, like you even have an article on the Pentateuch, right? Israel's story of origin. All these are great articles. Will give you the historical, social historical background context. Now, if you go to the individual book, not the reading guides, like for example, if we go to the New Testament, let's go to the New Testament. So we'll begin with, let's say we go to Mark, for example. Okay. You even get, apart from the reading guide, that we have reading guides on Mark. If I can just turn it there. So we have reading guides on Mark. This is Colossians. I just want to compare to you and show you that even though the reading guide discusses a lot on Mark, it also contains book introduction to the individual biblical book. So this is Mark, the reading guides to Mark, because RG here means reading guide. And you have, let me just, because Mark is a shorter chapter, but from page 428, double column, right, all the way to about 442. So 428 to 442 discusses Mark. And then when you turn to Mark, you get another introduction, right? 2 pages of introduction, and then you get the notes here as well. And so this study Bible, out of a lot of the study Bibles that I've used and I've watched reviews of, I found this is the most comprehensive in its treatment, the Catholic Study Bible, which is why I rave this. I give this 10 out of 10. This is the best study Bible, even though it has the word Catholic, which a lot of Protestant will not get, because a lot of people on YouTube that actually does all these videos are Protestant. They are reformists. But the Catholic Study Bible should also be purchased by Protestant, because Protestant also needs to know the Catholic view, because they grew out from Catholicism, right? Protestantism grew out from Catholicism. A lot of these church history, they're from the their Catholic history. Protestant basically just reform when it comes to scripture, but the whole tradition is Catholicism, right? And Eastern Orthodoxy. And so the Catholic Study Bible should be read by both Protestant and Orthodox, not because to have the Catholic leaning or to have Catholic theology, but because the materials that are being discussed here, though it is published by Oxford, so it is more towards the liberal view, right? But liberal doesn't mean it is something bad, right? And liberal here doesn't mean that the Orthodox, not the Orthodox Church, but the Orthodox view or devotional view is superior, right? And so it just presents a different way to read the Bible. It just presents a different way to look at the text, and you have to weigh the evidence for yourself. For example, the author here do not agree that the gospel authors Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John actually wrote, right? The historical Matthew did not write the gospel according to Matthew. The devotional view is that Matthew, the disciples of Jesus, actually copied Mark, because Mark has was a companion of Peter, and so Matthew has no problem copying Peter, right? Because Mark heard from Peter. And so that is the argument that the devotional people actually presented. But then again, there's no evidence that the gospel was actually written by Matthew. There's nowhere mentioned in the gospel that Matthew wrote Matthew. And in the ancient world, people always leave their name when they write these materials, right? People always write their names. And so if Matthew, apart from that, we have a lot of other problems, but if Matthew did actually write his gospel, why did he not leave his name? The same example for the Pentateuch, the Torah, we call it Exodus, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. These were not written by Moses, and the committee here believe or work towards the documentary hypothesis, or accept the documentary hypothesis, and disagree that Moses actually wrote the book, because we have the death of Moses, right? At the end of Exodus, we have the death of Moses, and so if Moses died, right, how can Moses predict his own death and then still write this one, right? So, and it is also written in the third person, same as the Gospels, right? So it is most probably, and we have no evidence that people actually wrote in the third persons in the ancient world. They always write in the first person, kind of like the same thing today. And so we have no evidence that the book of Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and Genesis, to begin with, were actually written by Moses. Here is the book of Galatians, the reading guide, and when we are dealing with the Pauline epistle, it goes through, for example, 2 Corinthians, it discusses the possibility of many different portions of the book, like for example chapter 1 to 6, chapter 7 and 8, and then chapter 9 is also another page, another portion, and then chapter 10 to 13 is another portion. So about 5 different authors possibly, though the conservative opinion that the entire 2 Corinthians was actually a single book. The evidence, I must say, weighs strongly that at least 2 authors, chapter 1 to 9, and then chapter 10 to 13. So it presents you different materials or different way to read the text. The difference between like historical critical study Bible and devotional study Bible is that devotional study Bible focuses more on the narrative, but historical critical study Bible also expand the discussion to the manuscript tradition, right? It discusses form criticism, literary criticism, narrative criticism, and it also talk about the manuscript. And so that is something that devotional study Bible purposely stay away from, because number one, it doesn't want to confuse the reader. Number two, it doesn't want to open this can of worms, right? So we will get to some study Bible that are actually dishonest in their take. In my opinion, they are blatantly dishonest, because these are top scholars and they know whatever they have written down is actually untrue. But a lot of the devotional people are gullible, and so they do not know, because they only read from one side. They only read from devotional perspective. They have not read from a critical perspective. Because why? A lot of these books, like for example the Catholic Study Bible, Protestants will not read them. A lot of Protestants will not read, except for those who are actually genuine in their research, or except those that wants to explore and learn more, and not just be tied down to their ideas, their beliefs, their church, for example. Even within Protestantism, we have the Baptists, we have the Anabaptists, like the Mennonites, so on and so forth. And we have all these people, they disagree with one another, so they will not read literatures that are produced by those camps that are, that they disagree with. But if you are really into learning, you have to explore the different ideas. Just because this is Catholic Study Bible, that doesn't mean that you will not benefit from this. And I am a Muslim, but that doesn't mean that I will not benefit from the history, because learning the history about the Israelites actually helped me understand the Quran. It provides background information of the people that the Quran is actually talking about. Though we do not have the Arabs literatures here, because this is mostly concerning with the Jewish and Greco-Roman world, but the the prophet that are most mentioned in the Quran is Moses, Moshe, Musa, and so that is important. About 138 times, if I'm not mistaken, the name Moses is mentioned in the Quran. For what reason? It is because for Muslims need to know the social history of the Bani Israel. Though there are different take on history, scholars debate about this and that, right? But generally, you have to know the social history, because that provides you a discussion of what the Israelites were like, what the Bani Israel were like, what were they doing, where were they, right? For example, we turn to the maps and I explain, inshallah, and then we will end the video. Right. So this is the first map, right? So I'm gonna have to turn this way around. Okay, this is the land of Canaan. The Great Sea is the Mediterranean Sea. Right. And this is the kingdom of Israel. Okay, the Israelites' kingdom that has been spread 12. Joseph did not have a land. The son of Joseph have them. And so this is a much bigger picture, right? But the map of our concern, if I can just turn here, is this. Okay, now this is the setting of Joshua and the judges, meaning about 1000 BC or so, right? David and Solomon about 1000 BC to 900 BC. And then after the time of Solomon, the kingdom split, because David actually combined all the kingdom, right? The Israelite kingdom, the kingdom of Israel. And then after the time of Solomon, the kingdom split between Israelites and Judah, right? Israel and Judah. The kingdom of Israel was destroyed during the Assyrian invasion. And then the kingdom of Judah was destroyed during the Babylonian invasion. And then they were brought down. This is Syria, Damascus, right? They were brought to Babylon, which is not mentioned in this map, right? If maybe perhaps much later on, you would have the. So it was brought. Yes, it was brought to Iraq, Babylon. Right, it was brought some around here. Okay, Babylonia. And so this is the kingdom of Israel, and so they were brought down here. And so the Persian came and then invaded the Babylonians, defeated them. All right, this map is better. And then they were allowed to return. So this is the path that they go and return to the land of Israel. Right, and so knowing the history, the background context, and also we have much earlier on Abraham, like the travel of Abraham. He went up, and then he went down, and then he went to Egypt, and then he go back to Canaan. Right, Canaan is this area here, the ancient land of Canaan. Tyre and Sidon is here, Tyre and Sidon. Right, and then we this is Egypt, obviously. Right, and so if you do not read the history or the background context, you will not know the travel of Abraham, the travel of the exiled Israelites, and when they return, right, they have problems building the temple, and then finally they built the temple. But then Alexander the Great came. This is Alexandria down here, right, Alexandria, and then he established he brought Hellenistic culture. And then much later on, Philo of Alexandria was also here. This is Mount Sinai. And so probably they would have crossed, the Israelites would have crossed somewhere around here. Again, the area is dispute. Right, Sinai Peninsula, is it in Saudi Arabia? Or is it in Egypt? Or is it in Arabia? So there are disputes as to where is Sinai. Because we do have Sinai in Saudi Arabia, like people do not know, right? They thought Sinai is Israel. No, Sinai is actually big. Sinai Peninsula. This is the attempt, right? So this area here is controlled by Egypt, because during the Egyptian Israelite war in the 20th century, right? Egypt managed to defeat Israel and then took over Sinai Peninsula, right? And so, and then it also stretched to Arabia, because it is also around this area here. These are all mountains. You can see, if you use maps, it's much easier to see. But this is Saudi Arabia here. Makkah, Medina is actually here, right? Makkah, Medina here. This, I mean, you combine this map like this, right? Makkah, Medina is here. And so this area is also Sinai. But the current Sinai is thought to be here, but it could also be within modern day Saudi Arabia, which is here. Right, so these are areas of dispute. We do not know for certain, right, where is it, because nowadays Sinai, if you actually take a tour to Mount Sinai, they will take you to the Egyptian part, right? But there's also Sinai in Arabia. All this area, this mountain, right, is possibility of Sinai. The Israelites could possibly be around here, right? Or the Israelites could also possibly be around here, which is modern day Saudi Arabia. So if you do not read literatures and explore the different literatures and read from both sides, you only get one portion. It's like you're only using your left brain, but you're not utilizing your right brain. And so if you want to be so-called a perfect human being, you need to utilize both sides of your brain, right? Your creative side and your technical side, right? So to speak. And so you also need to understand the argument that have been proposed by people from the opposite side, people that you disagree with. And so, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Catholic Study Bible, 3rd edition. The New American Bible translation is not a problem, because it is a critical edition that Catholic use, right? The only problem about Study Bible nowadays is that because it is super thick, the paper they use probably around 25 or 30 GSM, and so this sort of thing will happen right? It will not affect anything because you can still see the text and read the text. But this is something that if you want a physical copy of modern Bible even, right, you have to make do with this. For me, I have no problem with that, right? Because what's important is that the print. As long as water doesn't smudge here and destroy the print, anything else that happened to this book is none of my concern. Like, doesn't matter as long as I can read it. The font here is very small, probably 9 or 8, probably 9.5. I don't know. I don't care as long as I can read it. But ladies and gentlemen, if there's one thing that stands out from this study Bible, it is because of the reading guides. This is like introduction to the Bible. This page itself, right, this whole thing is like introduction to the Bible. You do not need to get a separate introduction to the Bible because this is literally introduction to the Bible, though it is not mentioned in that way, right? All the books in the Bible are explained, are introduced, and these are written by prominent scholars. The main contributor here is John J. Collins. I mean, these are all the main contributors, right? Daniel Senior, a Catholic priest, a Catholic father. John J. Collins, a scholar of the modern day Hebrew Bible. And so we have all this. If you have the previous edition, I'm not sure if you should get this edition. Probably yes, but I've not used the previous edition, the second edition, so I can't comment on that one. But for me, I would still get updated version. It's just like studying textbook. It's just like the same as any subject: physics, mathematics, chemistry, whatever it is, right? Knowledge will always be updated, and you should get the updated version, even if it's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, 10 pages that are updated. So ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of things that this Bible presents, and it is useful also for devotional and non-devotional use. Obviously, I do not use it from a devotional perspective. I am mostly interested in hearing what liberal take on the Bible actually is, and I also am interested in learning about the history, so on and so forth. Especially, but the main reason I got this is because I want to hear the Catholic take, the Catholic stance from a non-liberal from a non-devotional perspective, because I do have the Ignatius Study Bible, and that is from the devotional perspective, but this is from a non-devotional perspective, so it goes through a different critical method, historical method, so on and so forth. Published by Oxford University Press. So ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you guys on my next video. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.